Hi, I'm Leslie with ArtInsights, and I'm here with Lella Smith, and she is the creative director of the ARL, which is the Animation Research Library. And it's important for people who are in love with all things Disney to understand the difference between the ARL and the archives. Explain to me, if you could, and to everybody, what the differences are between those two.
Well, the Animation Research Library is a library of art.
Mm-hmm.
So we have all the animation art that went to create shorts, feature films, the featurettes, sometimes commercials, sometimes films that were made at the request of outside companies.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's all about art.
Do you have something from everything?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Of course, some things we have more of. There was a period when art was sold from the library. Animation was kept here, so usually we have the cleanup animation. And so it's inconsistent, but we have 60 million objects, so we have quite a bit.
Mm-hmm. And you have 3D and 2D art, so you have multi-plane camera things, and describe some of the really cool things you have that you guys.
Well, mostly we do have the actual art.
Mm-hmm.
When the films began to be produced in caps and other systems, technology took over a lot of that. But so, for instance, we have maquettes, which were used, as everybody knows, to give to the animators and artists working on a character so the character remained consistent.
And I've seen some Fantasia ones here, and you have the Nightmare Before Christmas actual, what the heck do you call this? Puppets,
yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, we have story sketches, the conceptual art, layouts, backgrounds, cell setups. We have about everything. Interestingly enough, the smallest part of the collection is cells.
Oh.
Largest part being works on paper.
Mm-hmm.
And we are keeping them in a museum quality environment.
And you guys have actually created, in partnership with a bunch of different conservation companies, special
boxes and folders.
Right.
And when I started here, there really weren't any archival materials, the sizes and the kinds of things that you would use for animation. And so we bought boxes, archival boxes, and we approached them and said, could you help us come up with a material that will help us keep the art better? And one of the most important things was we came up with a folder to store a cell setup that is cut out with thickness on the edge to take the weight off of the cells,
mm-hmm.
so that the cells aren't sticking to the background. And then
Right.
we use an interleaving material, a polyethylene material that keeps the cell from sticking to the background.
Mm-hmm.
So we just began to develop when we met a problem, we found a solution,
mm-hmm.
is basically it.
Mm-hmm.
And the archival companies have been good about that.
And they're stored in a variety of different ways. So like some of them are stored in those really big, long hallways of, I don't even know what, they're just like files that are like
Yes,
from floor to
compact
ceiling.
shelving with lots of shelves.
And they should say we're in a, like, sequestered, you'll never find out where we are. No one sees the outside of the building, no one knows where it is. You'll never find it, don't try. But, so it's very low key here, but it's like the Fort Knox of Disney animation, essentially.
And it needs to be.
Yeah, oh, absolutely, because it's so important, and it really is American pop culture, all kind of sitting in one beautiful little spot. The first time I ever met you, I was walking through, and there was a piece of artwork here that actually made me cry. It was a little embarrassing, because you and I don't remember, who is this person doing this? But there is such incredibly beautiful work here, and for collectors who are really in love with Ivan Earle's backgrounds or Mary Blair. I mean, there's just all of these story artists and background painters and the people that came together to create the beautiful work that you see on the screen is all here represented. It's put together with different movies, but then within the context of that, do you separate it by artist, or how do you do it?
We do both by artist and by element. Story sketches are kept together, animation drawings are kept together, and then sometimes when we have really important artists, we'll pull their materials aside that sort of happened over time as people continued to ask for Mary Blair, Bill Peet.
Mhm.
You know, then we found it useful to have his things isolated so we could pull them more quickly.
Which is interesting because, you know, there's all these artists people don't know about. Sylvia Holland's one of them. The longer the history of Disney, the more people find out about all of the amazing artists that are involved in the making of these, you know, the history of Disney.
That's right, and you know, I was surprised. We're doing an exhibition with Studio Ghibli, the Ghibli Museum, Nippon Television, Museum of Contemporary Art. We all came together to work on a Mary Blair exhibit. And I was surprised when we began to get things out that we had hundreds of Mary Blairs.
Talk about, there's a new show happening called Dreams Come True. It's at New Orleans Museum of Art, and it's 650 pieces, is that right? So can you talk a little bit about how you were involved in putting that together and how the show came to be in the first place?
Well, you know, the gem for the idea came from John Lasseter.
Yay,
John
Lasseter.
Because John really believes in the art, and he has been encouraging us to show it, and with the blessing of Bob Iger, who's also has been encouraging.
Super pro artist.
Yes, they really approve of this exhibition thing. John Lasseter had this wonderful idea, wouldn't it be great if we could show the art to some people from Princess and the Frog? It is, and the story is just fabulous. I really believe in this film. So we began to think about how we could tell a story, and it boiled down to the fact that fairy tales have been important in Walt Disney's ability to take story and sort of adapt it and make it work. And so, because John also believes in New Orleans, and he was the one who had the idea to base Princess and the Frog out of New Orleans.
Here's a tiny snippet of John Lasseter in New Orleans celebrating the opening of the Dreams Come True show at New Orleans Museum of Art. And he should be celebrating because every time he supports another museum show, it makes the Disney company a little bit better. Yay, John!
Well, maybe there's a museum in New Orleans where we can go. So we approached John Bullard, and the museum is very, very, very well known. They have first-class exhibits.
And John Bullard is the
director
of the
museum. And he said, well, let's sit down and talk about it. So we began to talk about it and came up with this idea of this Dreams Come True, art from the classic fairy tales of the Walt Disney Studio. And we began to pull the art, and the hardest thing, of course, was limiting it.
Cutting things out.
I hate that job.
But so do you just base it on your favorites to some degree, like within the context of different movies, or do you just think, I need watercolor, I need gouache, I need story sketches, I need, and I need something from every, how did you?
Well, it's a combination of all those things. We need to tell a story, and sometimes it comes down to stellar pieces that are
like the
very important. Sometimes it is because we need a good way to tell it, and maybe the best way to tell that story is with a story sketch. So we weigh all those issues, and I have a team of people I work with, they're researchers or like museum curators, go through the art, lay it all out, make selections, review, pick others, eliminate, and then, you know, hone it down to one subject.
And how long does that take? Did you have an idea of how many pieces you were? Weeks? That's it? That seems
just to make the first selection.
Wow, that's really impressive.
Yeah. And we didn't go through the process of scanning anything. We just kind of put it out and said, how can we tell this story? And over several weeks, we began to look at the art and make the selection.